So I'd say 99% of people nowadays use ChatGPT in their jobs, but can you use ChatGPT with Power BI? The answer, of course, is yes. But what we're going to do in this video is see how it does whenever we try and use it to help us with DAX and to create simple measures, but also a little bit more complex measures, and see if it gives us the correct values. Okay, so I have a simple page set up here in Power BI that we're going to use to try and, I guess, utilize ChatGPT to help with time intelligence analysis in Power BI. Probably the most popular, or one of the most popular ways to analyze data is by analyzing it by time, periods, months, quarters, weeks, same period last year, same period last week. And really just depends on, I guess, the leadership team or the business owner on what they want to look at. So one request that I got from a client was, can you show me the sales for today versus yesterday, this week versus last week, this quarter versus last quarter, and this year versus last year. But what was a little bit more complex than that was the business owner wanted to see the same period. So if we're whatever, I think we're like maybe just over 55 days into Q1, sorry, then what the business owner would want to see is 55 days into Q4 2023, comparing like with like, essentially the same amount of days. So that's where you can utilize ChatGPT. Some of them are straightforward and simple, and you don't need to use ChatGPT, of course, if you know DAX. If you don't know DAX, in my opinion, ChatGPT is perfect. You can do a YouTube course for a couple of hours to get a basic understanding of DAX. And as long as you can understand what it's spitting out to you and how to apply that to your report, but most importantly, as long as you can validate it, and that goes without DAX. If you're without ChatGPT, if you're performing DAX calculations and you're not validating that calculation is correct, then you're obviously doing something wrong. So it doesn't really matter if you're doing it with ChatGPT or without ChatGPT. That validation step is still, or should still be taken, in my opinion. But I think it's great for people that just don't have time to spend on learning DAX. And it also opened the barriers probably to quite a few people. I did see some high profile Power BI people on YouTube that were complaining about it. And more than likely, probably because they spent hours trying to learn DAX and now you can use ChatGPT. But in my opinion, if you look at the positive, it's opened the door for a lot of people. So what we'll do is we'll do a really quick demo on using it, how ChatGPT performs. We'll use this little, I guess, table matrix here on the right-hand side to see if it's giving us the correct information. I have a table here of data that I just spit out the sales amount by day. So I actually got ChatGPT to spit this out in an Excel for me. So you can use ChatGPT Plus or Premium, whatever it's called, to get it to send out Excel spreadsheets, PDFs, what have you. So 2 years of data in there, just a sales amount for each day. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to look at the daily sales, and we're going to look at today versus last day. So I have a measure, first of all, that just sums up all of the sales. And you can see here, it's just summing up the sales amount. So I'm going to utilize that measure in this measure. What I've done is I'm going to type out the questions in Word because it's a little bit annoying, the noise of typing with the mic. So the first one here is just, can you give me the DAX to calculate my sales for today? Now, the second sentence might seem like a bit too much, but the reason I'm going to just remove this, I put it in twice. The reason that I'm detailed, first of all, is because it's more likely to get the right answer from ChatGPT. Secondly, I am saying I have a measure called sales already. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to be able to just copy the code directly from ChatGPT and not have to edit it. So in the next one, I won't put that in and you'll see what happens. And I also told that I have a date table called date. So if I go back now to ChatGPT, paste that in there, post it in, then we'll see what it says. So first of all, it gives you the code. You can actually copy it from here, which pins it, and it also gives you a little bit of a brief explanation as to how to add this in and what it's doing. So if we jump back now to the report, and if we go to, I always create a measure table, new measure, and we'll say paste that in. So we'll just remove this first bit here. So you'll see now I don't need to edit anything because my sales was called sales and date table is called date table. I'll enter that in. And what we'll do now is we'll drag the sales table, the sales measure in here for now. Now what I should have did was I should have applied a filter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on, I'm going to format this first of all. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just scroll down just in the interest of time. Today is the 1st of March. So I'll scroll down to the 1st of March, 2024, and that value should be there. So there you can see 1st of March, 2,713. So the first one works. So I was just thinking there, we could actually create a calculated column in the date table. Could do a measure as well, but I'll just do it something different. So we'll go to the date table. Let's say we want a column in here to say yes if the date is in the future and no if it's not. And then I'll be able to then filter this check to not show any dates in the future because we don't really need to see the data in the future. So again, I've written it out here already. So just saying, can you give me the DAX for a calculated column, which just adds on a column into a table in Power BI rather than a measure. That will say yes if the date is the future and no if not. So I'll just copy that. I'll come over to ChatGPT, paste that in here. Okay, so fairly straightforward. Like if you're up to speed with DAX at all, you wouldn't really need to use ChatGPT for these simple ones. But again, if you're not, it's very, very beneficial to do so. So if I just paste that in now, so again, there's no red lines, which means it should work. And if we just filter this, so if we say, let's filter on yes to check one of the dates, you can see here 30th of June, 2024, 2024, and that is in the future. So that's working. So what I'll do now is I'll go over here. I'll drop that filter into, that column in as a filter into this visual. So I'll drag it in here and I'll say no. So I always only want to be looking at the date relevant. So, and then I'll tick this, which would give the latest date. So you can see now the 1st of March 2024 is because it's today. That's the highest we can go. So what we'll do now is we'll also now look at, can we calculate the sales based off yesterday? Because what we want to do is we want to have the sales today and sales yesterday in this visual and a little, I guess, trend. So are we looking, is it upwards or downwards trend? What percentage are we up? What percentage are we down? And that's essentially a KPI visual. And you would usually use these time intelligence calculations to build these KPI visuals. So yesterday's sales, we now want to drop that into ChatGPT. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the Word doc, copy the request, go over to ChatGPT, paste it in. Again, this is a fairly basic one. It should be able to handle this no problem at all. Where it might start to produce incorrect values now is when we go into the weeks and months. So copy that, go back to ChatGPT, make sure I'm on the new measure table, create a new measure. So Control V. So you can see here automatically it seems to be giving an error, and this is a good example. So what it's saying here is if we just hover over it, the parameter is not the correct type. So let's pretend we don't really know anything about ChatGPT. What I would do about DAX, what I would do in this example is I would just go back now to ChatGPT and say, this gave an error on, apologies for the typing sound, on the today parameter. Can you give me another one? Now, of course, again, if you're, I guess you don't have to be, an expert in DAX, but if you've used it before, you could just come up with another measure yourself. But this is a good example of, okay, let's see if it can come up with another one that will give the solution. So we'll copy the code now. We'll come back here. We'll paste it in here. And that one seems to be no errors anyway. So let's check that and see. So sales yesterday, enter it in. Just give it a bit of brief background on what this is, what DAX is, if people are watching this that aren't aware. So what it is, it's basically utilizing the date table to give us the sales from yesterday. How is it doing that? It's using the today function, which gives the date of today. It's taking one away from that, and it's basically saying you're making a variable, which is storing I guess, a calculation in a measure, and you're saying make that I guess, a filter essentially, and then you're filtering your sales for your date table to be equal to today less one. So it should work. So we'll drag it in here, sales yesterday. So you can see here it's showing up as blank. If we go to sales yesterday, this couldn't have been worse timing. So yesterday was a leap year. So that's the reason that it's showing up blank, because um, there was the 29th of February, and for some reason it's not showing up in my date table, which is strange. It should. So we'll actually just presume that that is correct, because sometimes it is correct. There's no date there, so the sales is blank. So what we'll do now is we'll drag in our sales here. So we'll sales today. Actually, I'll make this a KPI visual first. So go over here, select the KPI visual. The value wants to be what is going to be our sales today. The trend or the target is going to be the sales yesterday. I don't like this new feature with Power BI. You hover over a visual. And the trend, sorry, is going to be the day number. So a little bit too big. So we'll just reduce this to, we'll say 26. So it looks pretty bad because it's comparing against zero, which is making an infinity calculation. Now I could build that into my DAX to handle that, but just in the interest of time, I'm not going to bother doing that. But you'll see now, there's the first example of DAX failing at the first attempt, but you, I guess, ask it a second one, and it gives the correct one. So what we'll do now is we'll move on to week, and we'll see how it handles the weekly sales measures. Okay, so I just dropped the week number in here. Let's make it a little bit easier when we're doing our checks. So again, jumping over to Word here just to get the explanation of what we want to do. So can you give me the sales for this week so far? So it's a Friday the 1st of March. So it should give all the sales from Monday up until today. So if I go over to ChatGPT now and just paste that in, so you can see here, I actually didn't even need to put in anything around DAX, around Power BI. It's just, I presume, because it's in the same conversation, ChatGPT just knows that I need a measure or a Power BI DAX calculation at this stage. So if I copy this here, go back, another new measure, paste it in. So again, this one's an error. So it's saying start of week, which isn't a function. So cannot find the name start of week. Start of week is not a function. So go straight back to ChatGPT and saying, just say start of week is not a function. This is not working. Again, apologies for the typing noise. So that's a great example. Like, there is literally no function in Power BI that is start of the week. So it can be very vast on the types of errors that you get. And again, so you can see here that it's gave it again as well, which is a little bit odd. So, oh, sorry, it hasn't. I thought it spit out this new formula again. So it's give us this one instead. So let's copy this one and see. So go back, just replace it in here. So we're having that same issue with the today parameter. So go straight back and saying, I am also getting. So if you're watching this and you're saying there's quite a bit of time in going back and forth, and you have the time to learn DAX, then obviously do it. If you have zero time to learn DAX, if you're maybe just, yeah, you're too busy, I would just play around with ChatGPT, see how long, first of all, see how complex your calculations are, and then see, once you can do the validation, try and do a few and see how quickly it can get you the answer. And if it's taken too long, then obviously you probably need to decide, do I get a consultant in, or do you just have to try and find the time to learn it yourself? So I'll try this one, which will be the last one I'll try. So you get there again, it's doing the same thing with it today. So I'll do one last one. So let's see what it says here. So it seems to be doing a couple of steps here. So it's saying create a current date measure, which is just going to give the date for today. And then it's saying, so it's using again the start of the week function. So it's not working there. So what we'll do is we'll just go back over to Power BI. So, and I'll go through the way that I would then put in this calculation. You'll see how simple it is, and then I guess you can make your decision then if you think ChatGPT is useful, depending on your level of DAX. Okay, so this was actually a good one to actually go through. So what I did was I went ahead and created a measure myself. And it's fairly simple. It's current week sales. So what I did was I used a variable. Now you don't need to use a variable. You could create a separate measure. It's just best interest to create as much variables as possible, because then you have less measures showing up here on the right hand side. So all I said was create a variable called the current week, again, which is just like creating a measure in a measure. And just how do you create this? Just give me the week number, which is a function in Power BI, of today. So that's just going to give me 9, which is the week number of today. Then with any variable, you need to have a return action. So what do I want to do then? I want to calculate the sales when the week number equals the current week. So this is the number that it's giving me, which doesn't look correct. So at first glance anyway. So you'll notice that if I'm going to sum up all of these in my head, so current week is 9. So you have 4 plus 3 is 7, plus 1 is 8, plus 3 is 11, plus 2 is 13, for rounding, maybe 14,000. So it doesn't seem correct. But whenever you actually think of it, all you're doing is you're looking at the week number. Even though it's called current week, it's only taking the week number of today. So if we go in here and if we filter this week number to equal 9, you'll probably see what's happening. So there. Now, I'm not sure actually why it's showing 39K. I'll actually need to check that and see. Well, actually, you might be able to put a week number in here. Delete that. Then what we'll do is I'll X out of this, put in the week number, sales. I don't want to sum my week numbers. Yeah, that's not going to work. Days. What I'll do is I'll replace the week number with days. So I'm seeing why that is giving a value that doesn't look correct to me. So I'm trying to see where that difference may be. So I'll put in the current week sales. Sorry, not current. Yeah, current week sales in here. And I'll put in a thing here. Oh, I know what's happening now. So there's a couple of values that I forgot to. So I had is the future date no. So I'll take that off, and there you go. So if I exit it out of this, bring back in my current week sales. So I had this last day hidden because it's tomorrow essentially. So that's rounded up to 39K. So what's happening essentially is it's giving the week number also from yesterday. So how would I handle that? So I'd go back in, sorry, not from yesterday, from last year. So how would I handle that? I'd go back into my measure, and I'd say where the week number equals the current week, and I'd put a second filter and say where the year is equal to day. Let's try that. Yeah, it's not equal, and so let me actually go up here and say create a second variable and say current year, what I should have did first, equals the year of today. Okay. Now I'm going to have to just fix this here. So now my second filter is going to be the date table year, which is what I should have did first, is equal to the current year variable. So now that should work. So now 19K, if I go here and drag in a year filter from my date table into this visual and select 2024, we'll see 18, which is rounded up to 19. So that's essentially a little, I guess, preview of using ChatGPT with Power BI. It's probably mixed. Again, if you're someone that has time to learn Power BI, definitely try and learn at least the basics. So that means, like, if I jump back over to ChatGPT, that means when it spits out this, you can sort of understand what it's trying to do. Like, for example, you would know then if you have a basic understanding, well, probably a little bit more of a basic understanding that start of week isn't a function. You know that this is the table name, this is the column name, that kind of thing. If you don't have time, I definitely suggest to play around with ChatGPT and see, if you can. I guess if it can definitely help. I guess which is the main thing. Just make sure to do that step with validating the calculation that it's giving you. One last thing I wanted to show was you can actually reverse engineer it. So what does that mean? So I'm consulting with a client on Power BI, and they already had Power BI in place, and the previous Power BI guru, who he's definitely much more advanced than me, he had very complex calculations in the data model, and some of them were fairly big and chunky. Now, I'm not going to show any of them, obviously, for confidentiality reasons, but I'm going to show a more bulkier DAX calculation, and I'm going to show how you can reverse engineer. So, what do I mean by that? So, again, going back to that, to me looking at the calculations that were created by someone else, I can put in the DAX measure into ChatGPT and say, what is this trying to achieve? So what I'll do is I'll just showcase a more, I guess, chunkier DAX formula. So this would be a relatively big one. That you can have much bigger than this as well. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go over to ChatGPT, and I'm going to just say, can you explain in simple terms what this measure. Now, of course, this would be unique. You would really only use this in the situation that I mentioned, that you're taking over a Power BI report from someone else and there's some calculations in there. And you can leave notes in Power BI measures to explain what you're doing, but it's very rare that people do that because it's just too time consuming. So you can utilize ChatGPT for this. So the measure that it was the same period last quarter sales. So it's saying that it's breaking it out into steps. So you can see here, I'm not going to read through it all. Obviously, it's on the screen, but you can see that it's determining the current quarter. How many days are we into the current quarter? It's calculating a start and end date of the current quarter, and yeah, it's fairly complex. I could say, can you summarize? And let's see if you can summarize in 2 lines, because sometimes it can just give a little bit too detailed of a response. So it's saying it's aiming to calculate the sales from the start. So I guess that's sort of a good example. So the second response is what it's actually trying to do. So it's saying it's aiming to calculate the sales from the start of the same quarter in the previous year up to the current date, adjusted by a few days. But in this one here, it's actually giving you a breakout of each section of the DAX and what it's trying to do. So again, two different responses, but just another way you can utilize it to, I guess, reverse engineer and try and figure out what is the calculation trying to